Alright, so Bezat Hashem, this Sunday, Purim is coming up. And in order to better understand what exactly went on during that period of time, it would be a good idea if you had a chance to read a little bit of the Midrash on the Megillah. The Midrash on the Megillah gives more information, more details as to what actually went on in Shushan. What was motivating Haman, what was he really after, and why did the various actors, if we can call them, Mordechai and Esther, why did they behave in a certain way? So a lot of lessons to be learned, and that's why it's a good idea for us to go over what exactly happened in Purim. Purim takes place during the 70 years of Galut in Babel. This is between the first Bet HaMikdash and the second. Am Yisrael is in the diaspora for 70 years. It's a temporary Galut. And they eventually come back. Not all of them. Some of them stayed behind in Persia and elsewhere. However, even though they went to Babel, they did go further east. Some went to Persia, some went further to Afghanistan. And we're talking about the 2.5 tribes that remained. We're not talking about the Aseret HaShvatim, the 10 lost tribes. Shegalu, who went into the Galut, into the diaspora, about 100 years before everybody else. And they're, of course, still scattered all over the place. And Bezat Hashem, they will join up with us very soon. I have a separate lecture just on the Aseret HaShvatim, on the 10 tribes of Bezat Hashem. I will share with you another opportunity. There's a silver Honda blocking somebody's car. If you can please move in here. So we're talking about the period of time between the first and second temple. Am Yisrael, even though they have just experienced a terrible Khurban, terrible destruction, and you'd think that they would learn some lessons, unfortunately not all the lessons were learned. And what happens in Shushan is that they get close to Ahashverosh, they enjoy a big feast with him, and they get close to the Goyim. And in that feast, the rabbis tell us, were also the kelim from the Bet HaMikdash, vessels from the holy temple which Ahashverosh was using and being very disrespectful of. That scene was not too good. After a Khurban, to find Jews involved with Ahashverosh, some of them even appearing to be worshipping the idol of Ahashverosh, it didn't look too good. And when things like that happen, Bashamayim, it makes a terrible impression, and they decide that there's going to be some sort of threat against the Jews. Something has to happen to wake them up. As you know, the system of Hashem, the Midat Hadin, has mekatregim, has continuous accusing angels, and that's what their job is. To accuse. If they find something to accuse about, they raise it. And if it's really serious, something has to be done about it. Hashem cannot let these things go on for too long. If you let somebody do something terribly wrong for a long time, he may deteriorate, be completely assimilated, and what have you accomplished? No more Jewish nation. So you have to put a stop to it. You have to remind them who's in charge. You have to remind them that they have to come back to Israel and rebuild the Bet HaMikdash, that they're only here temporarily, they're in the Galut, they're in a foreign land, they're not home. So they have to be reminded. So what sort of a reminder does Hashem come up with to bring the Jews to their senses? An imminent threat of annihilation. Right? I think everybody over here knows the story, is familiar with the story of Purim, that the Jewish nation was facing annihilation. And this is, of course, a big threat. This is not just the Jews in Persia, but everywhere else. Now, do you think for a moment that Hashem really, in fact, intended that to be so? That just after the first destruction, He will go ahead again and wipe them all out? I mean, that seems a little bit difficult to believe. And the rabbis tell us that, in fact, Hashem never intended that Haman succeed. It was never planned like that. But the Jew does not know. The Jew is supposed to think, yes, there's imminent danger, therefore I have to prepare myself in not defending myself, but of course in turning to Hashem, who is the one who brought this upon me. In other words, the Jew did recognize at that time that this is Omen Hashemayim. They obviously understood what needs to be done. They needed some leadership and some guidance, of course. Nobody does anything on his own. So they needed somebody, and that is Mordechai, of course, to get them all together, to do teshuvah, to come back and do the right thing. But nevertheless, they did not know what Hashem's real intent here was. And the real intent was to scare them. The real intent was to bring them, of course, to do teshuvah, but never did Hashem want, of course, to wipe them out. Why? Because the whole sin in Shushan was what? Was only klape chutz. The Jews never really worshipped Avodah Zarah. They only, on the surface, on the outside, they made believe like they were giving respect to Hashverosh and to the Avodah Zarah, but deep down, internally, they never meant it. They were completely of the Hashem, Yireh Hashem, complete God-fearing Jews, but they were a little bit lax in that they appeared to be. They wanted to give the impression that they were with Ahashverosh in every respect, so they made it appear like they're going along with him. So Hashem says, you know what, since you only made it appear, but you never really meant it, so will I. Ke'ilu, I will make it appear as though I'm about to bring destruction. Right? But it will never happen. In other words, eventually, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, got what he wanted. In other words, the ultimate result was that Am Yisrael came back, and came back very, very strong, even stronger than before, as a result. You know, this happens a lot of times when people go through a challenging situation, very difficult times, and it makes them even stronger than they were before the challenge. And they were not very, very strong during the Horban. They could not hold back the destruction of the temple. And here they came out even stronger, as we will see what they committed themselves to, what they took upon themselves as a result of this incredible threat to the entire Jewish nation. One of the questions that comes up in the Megillah it's a funny scene. But here you have everybody giving respect to Haman, and here you have that stubborn Jew by the name of Mordechai who doesn't budge. There's a whole story behind this relationship between Haman and Mordechai. They knew each other from before, but I'm not going to get into that. But I do recommend that you read up a little bit about it. Who Haman was, he was a nothing, he was a slave. Anyway, he got to the top. And here's Mordechai not budging, looking at this guy, not bowing down to him like everybody else. And that's, of course, making Haman very upset. And as a result of Haman becoming upset, what happens? Haman decides, oh, I have an idea. I'm going to get back at him. He's going to regret it. I'm going to destroy his people. So isn't it obvious that perhaps Mordechai is not doing the right thing? He's putting his people in danger. Why don't you just give the guy respect, bow down to him? Don't jeopardize the Jewish people for your personal vendetta against him, or whatever your reasons are not to bow down to him. You are jeopardizing, you are risking everything here. And you're not allowed to do that. Can you do that? I mean, there are clear halachot, clear guidelines, what one can do, what one not can do. And here we're talking about the entire Jewish people. And you can't say that Mordechai was unaware of this. He did realize that this Haman is capable of tremendous amount of damage. Then why did Mordechai not bow down to him? And the obvious reason, there are other explanations, is that Mordechai was aware, very much aware, that the whole reason that this imminent threat to the Jewish nation is coming about is because Am Yisrael gave at least the appearance that they were worshipping idols, that they were getting too close to this Avodah Zarah. And so since Mordechai knew that that was at the bottom of this, that was the problem. That is what got this whole thing started. Mordechai therefore knew that the tikkun, to remove this accusation from Am Yisrael, requires mesirut nefesh, requires self-sacrifice. It requires not budging, not showing any sympathy or any association for avodah zarah, for idol worship. So he had to take the other extreme of what his brothers did. His brothers appeared to be worshiping, appeared to be associating with idols. Here he had to do the exact opposite. He had to distance himself completely, even though it involved risking the entire Jewish nation. You also find that Mordechai instructs Esther to do the same. Esther tells Mordechai, I can't just go see Achashverosh whenever I want. I'm risking my life. Right? Mordechai sent Esther on an important mission. Go speak to Achashverosh. This can't be happening. He can't allow this thing. He doesn't even know himself what's going to happen. And Esther has a problem. Even though she's the queen, she just can't go in at any time and speak to the king. She has to be called. Some queen, that she can't go in whenever she wants. But those were the rules of the court. Those were the rules of the palace. Nevertheless, Mordechai tells her you need to do so, even though it involves risking your life, but it's worth it. Because that is what's needed right now, mesirut nefesh. Hashem wants to see self-sacrifice, that a Jew is willing to sacrifice everything in order to be mevatel de gezerah, in order to be able to cancel this decree. And therefore, Esther goes along, and of course nothing ever happens to her, but that is exactly what was necessary. Esther learns from Mordechai that this is what is required. Therefore, what does she do? She tells Mordechai, now it's her turn to tell him, to give him instructions. Lech kenos et kol haYehudim. Go gather all the Jews in Shushan Abirah, right? That they should fast, that they should do teshuvah. This statement of Lech kenos et kol haYehudim, gather all of the Yehudim, this statement in itself contains the message that Esther understood and that what the tikkun needs to be. Hem hitkansu. They got together in the wrong place by Achashverosh to be Oved Avodah Zarah and to enjoy the Seudah of Achashverosh, to drink with him and eat with him. Then the tikkun for that hitkansut, for that gathering, has to be measure for measure. Lech kenos, go gather them for a good cause, for the cause of prayer and teshuvah, in order to be metaken what they did wrong. And of course, that's what they did. They fasted. And the fasting, what is fasting for? Fasting has to do with holding back food, which is what we're going to be doing tomorrow, Ta'anit Esther. Abstaining from food, what for? Not just as a way of showing remorse, but also to be a tikkun for their hana'ah, for the pleasure that they received in the meal of Achashverosh. So saying, okay, we had all this benefit, we had all this enjoyment, now we're going to hold back that enjoyment by fasting for 3 days in a row. And by the way, 3 days, I think most of you would agree, is not an easy fast. 3 24-hour days, according to the Kabbalah, is equivalent to 40 days. In other words, if you have a choice. If you want a big, powerful tikkun for avonot, you have a choice of 40 days, just during the day, or 3 days in a row, 24 hours.
You do something?
Nothing.
You shower?
Shower, yes. Just food and drink. It's a powerful tikkun. I don't recommend it today. There's other ways to be mechaper avonot than fasting. But according to the Kabbalah, this is a very powerful tikkun. 3 days in a row is equivalent to 40 days, just fasting during the day and eating at night.
Is it like a Yom Kippur fast?
Yom Kippur, but three of them in a row.
But you can shower, you can cook.
Right. I mean, obviously,
Cologne?
I don't think you would want to put cologne when you're fasting for 3 days. I don't think you would even think about
No, I'm
that.
talking about for the Purim fast.
Oh yeah, for tomorrow's fast?
Yeah.
That's fine. It's just a fast of abstaining from food and drink. The other things don't apply. Yeah, but you don't rinse your mouth in the morning because you don't want to get any water and any liquids into your mouth. So anyway, so this is a powerful fast. It's not just 1 day, it's 3 days in a row. It's a powerful fast. And of course everybody goes along with it. Everybody understands that that's what needs to be done. As a result of them doing what they're told, we have a miracle. Instead of nikhalu agoyim, instead of the goyim coming and gathering upon the Jews to kill them, the Jews gathered upon the goyim, v'nafochu. Right? Everything happened the other way around. In other words, we see from the whole story that the tikkun worked. That instead of the goy succeeding, as was planned by Haman, the Jews succeeded, v'nafochu, and everything turned around in their favor. Who is this enemy that we are confronting? It's important to recognize that the enemy in the Megillah of Amalek, in the Megillah of Esther, is Amalek. How do we know it's Amalek? What gives away that this is Amalek? In other words, there are different characteristics to all sorts of enemies. We've had many enemies. We have Ishmael, we have Edom. There's an enemy called Amalek. What gives away that this enemy is Amalek is because he's the only one of all the enemies that the Jews have that comes lashmid, larog, uleabed. You have in the Megillah 3 descriptions of destruction. Lashmid means to destroy. Larog, to kill. Leabed means to waste. Why 3? Lashmid, the emunah of the Jew, to destroy his emunah, to put a stop to his faith. Larog, his physical body. Uleabed ta kesef shelo, and to waste or to remove or to take away his money. That is what Amalek wants. In other words, Amalek is after everything, to destroy completely, and he's especially after the emunah. And that is exactly what the Germans tried to do, to destroy everything. They didn't want any Torah, any Jew left. I mean, complete destruction, men, women, children, they didn't care. Therefore, the Mehiyat Amalek, the mitzvah, the special mitzvah that we have called Mehiyat Amalek, erasing Amalek, is a complete erasing also. In other words, just like he wants to destroy us completely, our mitzvah, if we recognize him, and if we were empowered to do so, would be to completely destroy him and not have any mercy on him. Since he wants to do that to us, we need to do that to him. He's the greatest danger of all our enemies, the greatest danger to the Jews' faith. And that is why he called it the final solution. Right? The Germans called it the final solution. In reality, they didn't realize, but that is exactly our mitzvah. The final solution to all the world's problems is removing Amalek, who is behind just about all the problems. What's the greatest danger of Amalek today, also, especially today, is that Amalek has the desire, the interest to weaken the Jews' resolve, to weaken the Jews' emunah, by cooling him off. How do you cool off a Jew? You cool off a Jew by convincing him, shakol mikre, everything is just by chance. There is no hashgaha, there's no yad elyonah, there's no divine providence, there's no God who's running this show. There was Amalek, through the various mechanisms that he has and influences over the world, whether it's the media, the TV, regardless of what tools and mechanism he uses, he tries to introduce philosophies or all sorts of influences, movies, whatever it is, to take away the idea that there is a God who's a boss. We believe very, very strongly that there is no mikre, there's nothing that happens by chance. Everything is min hashamayim, everything is be'ashgaha. As we will see, the whole Megillah is an incredible movie, if you can call it that. That if there are some movies that if you start watching them, and by the way, I haven't been to a movie in many, many years, but nevertheless, I remember that there's some movies that you're watching it for 25 minutes and you still can't figure out what's going on. Have you ever noticed that? It's only till later. I forget what they call it. There's a special name to it. Intrigue. You can't figure it out until later on when all the pieces fall together. Megillat Esther, of course the script was written by, not Spielberg, by Kadosh Baruch Hu. there's a script, and you can't figure out what's going on. There's a Vashti there somewhere, and she's removed from the scene, even though she was the favorite queen. Then there's this Haman, and then there's two guys who are speaking Turkish. In Iran, they don't speak Turkish. The language is Farsi, even though the language back then was a different Farsi. Purim. Even though the language was different than it is today, nevertheless, you had here and there, you had a few immigrants from different lands. Turkey is a neighbor. And all of a sudden you have Mordechai overhearing these two guards speaking a language that they thought nobody would overhear and understand them. And they were planning to assassinate Hachashverosh. And all of a sudden Haman comes to power, and all of a sudden he gets this crazy idea. What's going on here? Where is this all going? If you read pasuk by pasuk and were never told the story of Purim, you're wondering to yourself, what's going to happen? Where is this leading to? Why does this have to happen? A lot of intrigue. But once you get to the end of the Megillah, you understand what is going on and who is directing all the pieces together. And that's what we're going to see soon. Very, very important lessons, and that are really principles in Judaism can be learned from this whole story of Purim in the Megillah. So anyway, Amalek attempts in every generation to distance the Jew from his emunah, to cool him off, and if he cannot succeed spiritually, in other words, philosophically, he tries physically, he tries whatever way he can to destroy the Jew. But he's especially after the emunah. What is the best way to fight Amalek today? We don't have the power to destroy him. We do have the promise in the Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will eventually eliminate him, right? When Mashiach comes. But in the meantime, how do we deal with Amalek? So what do we have? We had Lashmid, La'arog, La'abed, 3 forms of destruction. Lashmid was the emunah. In order to counter that, we reinforce the Torah. More classes of Torah, more study of Torah. That counters the threat of Amalek trying to cool us off. Because if a Jew is ignorant, he's his worst enemy. Ignorance is the worst enemy. When a Jew therefore learns Torah, he's better prepared to fight the enemy. So the learning of the Torah comes as a response to the Lashmid. What's the response for Laharog? Avodat Hashem, the service of Hashem. He wants to kill our bodies. To serve Hashem, to do more Ma'asim Tovim, more good deeds. Better prayer, that's all Avodah. And Keneged Le'abed, which is to take away our money, how do we counter that? With Milut Chasadim, with acts of charity and kindness. This is the way we counter, this is the way we fight Amalek. From all the 3, we can see from the Megillah, even though it's not clear in the Megillah, but it's in the Midrash, that what bothered Haman the most was not that the Jew observed Shabbat, that he ate kosher. What bothered him the most was that the children were learning Torah. The day schools, that's what it says. He was very much bothered by that. Because he realized that here you have beautiful children who are clean and pure from any sin, studying Torah. That is the Jew's greatest weapon against him. Smart Amalek. Amalek is smart. So therefore, he wanted to eliminate them first. He wanted to remove the Torah. And what do you think Germany did in World War II, Hitler? They went after the rabbis, the rabbiner, first. Get the rabbis. Once you remove the rabbi, you've removed the source of Torah, of teaching, of the community. And therefore, the Jew without the Torah is powerless against the German. So they knew what they had to do. If you have a Jew learning Torah, he's going to be courageous. He's going to believe. He may fight back. Or simply, even if he doesn't fight back, he has zechuyot, he has merits from above. He has protection granted to him. The Torah Megina, the Torah is protecting you. So this Amalek is a very smart enemy. We have to remove them, detach them from the Torah. That's why Rabbi Akiva, by the way, when he was in danger, the Romans decreed no Torah teaching. He says, no, I'm going to still teach Torah. A Jew cannot be with the Torah, without the Torah. Despite the danger, the physical danger, the imminent danger that the Romans are going to catch him, and they caught him in the end. Nevertheless, every day that he could teach Torah, every student that he can give over the Torah, was a tremendous source of of inspiration to others. Plus, this was the key to their survival. Without Torah, the Jewish people cannot survive. Just look at those who intermarried in this country. As you know, unfortunately, not only in this country, in various other countries, there is a plague. Certain Jews are assimilating and intermarrying. How could they do that? Only because they have very weak roots. They have no Torah. If the Torah would be very, very strong, they would never dare do that. Right? I'm talking about, of course, complete assimilation and intermarriage where there's no Jewish life whatsoever in the home. Obviously, if somebody marries somebody from another race, another culture, and there's a complete acceptance of all Torah mitzvot, that is a whole different story. When we talk about assimilation intermarriage, we're talking about completely detaching oneself from the Masorah, from the tradition. That happens because one is not in love with the Torah. He therefore easily falls in love with other things that are contrary to the Torah. You have in the Megillah another kitrug, another accusation against the Jewish people, besides the Avodah Zarah, and that is what Haman presents to Achashverosh. Am mefuzar mefurad. Why does he have to tell Achashverosh, by the way, I want to introduce to you one of your citizens. One of your citizens, they're called Jews, by the way, and you know these Jewish people? Am mefuzar mefurad. They're not united, they're just scattered all over the place. I don't know if he used any other additional adjectives which are not in the Megillah. He could have called them communists, capitalists. They call us all sorts of names these days. Zionists, yeah, whatever. But he called them mefuzar or mefurad. They dispersed, scattered all over the place, they're not united. You know what he's really telling us? He's giving us a clue as to what some of our problems are. The Jew is being reminded that Goy is calling us dispersed and scattered. In other words, he's blaming us for not being united. Maybe he's right. Maybe there's not enough achdut, enough unity amongst us. We have to, when we hear something, maybe even though we don't agree with what is being told to us by our spouse or by somebody else, we have to pay close attention. Maybe there is some truth in it. They're not maybe just making it up. Maybe there is some truth to that. We sometimes are uncomfortable and don't want to accept what is being told to us. But maybe there is some truth to what he's saying. So, Am mefuzar mefurad is a nasty accusation. So, what did Am Yisrael have to do to correct that? What do we do in Purim to counter that accusation? We unite. And how do we unite in Purim? In a way that we don't even unite on Hanukkah or Pesach or Shavuot. We unite by mishloach manot ish lere'eu, matanot le'avunim. Did you ever wonder why Mordechai and Esther came up with this idea that you only find at the end of the Megillah? You know what? Purim we're going to celebrate every year. Okay, I agree. We're going to put on costumes too, to make fun of Haman. And to be happy. Fine, I can go along with that. But what's the whole idea of mishloach manot? Sending gifts to your friends? Just Purim, you should send gifts all the time. Matanot le'avunim, giving to the poor, we give to the poor every day of the year. There's an emphasis. Purim dafka, make sure you have to give at least 2 manot, 2 items of food to one friend, and matanot le'avunim, you have to give gifts to more than one poor man, to several poor men, at least 2. What's this idea of? What's this emphasis? Because this is to bring about ahdut. We celebrate together, we don't celebrate by ourselves. True simcha, true happiness is not when you're happy by yourself at home, is when you make others happy, others who are sad, others who don't have. This is real ahdut. This shows that you really care. This shows unity. So on Purim, we strengthen the unity amongst us by emphasizing gifts to our friends, by emphasizing charity to the poor. We have a seudat mitzvah too. Sunday, you're supposed to have a seudah. You're supposed to sit down and have a meal and drink lots of wine. At least more than what you're supposed to. More than what you're used to. But just don't drive after that. Drink, become a little bit high. It's okay if you fall asleep. That's the whole idea of Purim, is to really enjoy, to be happy. But don't mix wine with alcohol. Right? There's no mitzvah to vomit. There's no mitzvah to really get drunk and lose your senses completely, and you start doing wild things and behaving like a monkey. That there's no. On the contrary, that's very dangerous. And it's not a good idea. It spoils the whole thing. So that mitzvah is a meal of a mitzvah. You sit down, enjoy with your family or with other people. Mitzvot Hashem here in Torah, or will also be having a Seudat mitzvah. You're invited. 4 p.m. Mitzvot Hashem, a nice meal with Divrei Torah, with singing, music. This is the way to enjoy the Purim properly, other than the Mishloach Manot and the Matanot LaEvyonim. How do we know Am Yisrael did Teshuvah? We see at the end of the Megillah that Am Yisrael committed themselves. Besides giving to the poor and besides sending gifts, which is a form of unity, strengthening the unity, it says Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim. Kimu v'kiblu. Kimu ma shekiblu kvar. They committed themselves, they took upon themselves what they've already accepted before. Where did they accept? In Matan Torah, when the Torah was given, they had already said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will follow. But back then it was more out of fear. They heard the voice of Hashem, they heard the sounds. It was so obvious to them that the rabbis characterized Matan Torah as accepting yoke of heaven, Torah Mitzvot, more out of fear. Like you had almost no choice. It was too obvious. It was frightening. Purim, Kimu v'kiblu. They reenacted the commitment to Torah Mitzvot, but this time from Ahava. This time out of love. No fear. They really did it b'simcha. So we're seeing various tikkunim, various commitments happening on Purim. And that is why there's an emphasis on Chodesh Adar and on Purim of Simcha. Even though you find V'samachta b'chagecha being happy on the holidays, this whole month, it says Mishenichnas Adar marbim v'simcha. The moment Adar arrives, we're supposed to intensify, increase the amount of Simcha. You know why? Because Simcha is one of the most powerful midot, one of the most powerful characteristics that can bring about just about any tikkun. A person who's happy will perform better, not only at his job, not only in court too, right? But being happy, you will be able to perform better at home too, as a husband, as a father, as a friend. Happiness, it really makes a big difference. If a person is sad and depressed, he's not in the mood to do anything. He won't get out of bed, he won't get out of his house, he won't want to go anywhere, he won't want to do anywhere, won't want to talk to anybody, because he's sad, he's depressed. Sadness and depression slows you down, happiness speeds you up. Yes?
I had a question. You said that in Purim, the Jewish people have the opportunity to choose to take the Torah by choice, by love.
Right.
When Achashverosh made the decree that all the Jewish people will die at a certain, or that they would go to war with the Jewish people, he couldn't take away that decree. So
he sent out new decrees.
But they still went to war. The Jewish people still fought and killed many.
Right. The Jews were given permission to go after their enemy. No, to go after their enemy, to go on the offensive, actually.
But
yeah.
But if let's say they turned away from the Torah at that moment, they wouldn't have the merit to win.
Yeah, but of course this was already after they had already done teshuvah. After the fasting, Haman was hanged, and they already knew that the tide was turning around, right?
Yeah.
And now everything was in their favor, not going against them.
But if they didn't accept the Torah with love at that moment afterwards, then wouldn't it backfire on them? They would not.
No, as I said, there were various commitments that they took upon themselves. It was such a happy time, a great celebration, where from the most terrible decree of imminent danger of a kind that they've never heard of before, things turned around in a miraculous way. Everything's v'nafochu, everything was turned around, everything, that they finally realized what the movie was all about. Now they finally get the hint, they understood the message, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was waiting for this. So they on their own committed themselves, and this time out of ahava, out of love. So anyway, so in the Chodesh Adar, there's therefore an emphasis on simcha. It is through the midah of simcha that one can repair everything. And the idea of being besimcha from the beginning of the month is so that we should be able to really feel and understand and experience the miracles. If a person is not happy, he doesn't bring himself to happiness, then he doesn't really pay attention to what's going on. In other words, from the moment Adar arrives, we already increase the Simcha in order to really be able to experience Purim properly. But as I said before, true Simcha is not just to be happy by yourself, it requires making others happy. So that is why we gladden the hearts of those who do not have the means, to provide for themselves, whether it's a meal or other needs. In other words, we send them gifts of food and money. What I'm going to do now is go over with you various points that stand out from this whole story that are fundamental in Judaism. Nekudot Merkaziyot, very central to Judaism, that teach us a lot about the proper hashkafa, the proper outlook. How is a Jew supposed to look at certain things? What is he supposed to make out of a certain situation? The most obvious point that stands out in the entire Megillah, the clearest one of all, is Hashgacha Pratit, divine providence, that I mentioned a little bit before, that Amalek is trying to distance us from that kind of a belief. That is the most central and the most obvious and the strongest message of all. In Megillat Esther, what do we see? There must be a God who controls everything. He's the one that made this whole thing happen. He's the one that made things turn around. That is the obvious message. You can't avoid seeing that, even though the name of Hashem does not appear. It is only insinuated. It's only hinted. In the word Hamelech, the king. Who's the real king? Not Achashverosh, the king of all kings. He's the one that's bringing all of this about. You can't, ignore this. It's so obvious that this is what stands out more than anything else. Hashgacha Pratit. We see the hand of Hashem that's directing everything. We see in the end that the script was written. We see when things are exposed what was really intended all along. And in our prayer, we pretty much say a statement that is equivalent to Hashgacha. We say in the Vayivarech David, we say, Vata Moshel Bakol. And you rule over everything. You control everything. Vata Moshel Bakol. You have complete control over everything. Even over kings. Achashverosh was only a puppet. One day he goes along with Haman. The other day he hangs Haman. That's incredible. This is your main guy. You gave him your ring. You appointed him. You made him in charge. And all of a sudden, not too long after that, you hang him? Just because Esther said, this guy is giving us a hard time? And what's going on over here? Shlomo Melech tells us, the hearts of kings and princesses is in the hands of God. He basically guides them. He basically controls them. Why is that so? More than anybody else? Because kings have the power to decide the fate of an entire country. You think that they can just do whatever they want? You think Bush can do anything? Even though he has to consult with Congress in some things at least, Hashem would not just allow him to do anything, or the Prime Minister of Israel. You think he can decide the fate of all the Jews living in Israel, what's going to happen with them? If he does not direct it, if he does not accept it, if he does not go along with it, then it won't happen. And he may even plant ideas in his mind, because the king is only a puppet. Even though we all have free will, which is B'ezrat Hashem our next topic, we all have free will, and we can make many decisions on our own, and therefore we are responsible for our actions. But when it comes to a king who's in charge, responsible for an entire country, he just can't do anything he wants. And therefore, that stands out too. That here, the king was not in complete control of everything. In other words, there's nothing happening here by chance. We see the famous words of the rabbis in the Midrash. You see how one sheep can survive among 70 wolves? Isn't that a miracle? What, a sheep among 70 wolves? Even one wolf can attack a sheep and kill the sheep. We have 70 wolves, 70 nations, many enemies around us. Millions and millions of Muslims who would love to take over Israel, love to remove the Jews and throw them into the Mediterranean Sea. That's what they're all dreaming about all the time. Who stops them? Who's responsible for the Jews' survival? Not the Prime Minister, not the Air Force. Only the ro'eh, the shepherd, who's guiding them, who's protecting them. It's not the strength of the sheep, but of the shepherd. In this case, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That stands out in the Megillah too. That it's not through our strength, it's not through our intelligence, it's through the Ashgacha of Hashem. And as we say, Gadol ha'etzah v'rav ha'aliliyah. That's another pasuk. Let me quote it to you exactly. גדול העצה ורב העלייה אשר עיניך פקוחות על כל דרכי בני אדם לתת לאיש כדרכו וכפי מעליו. In other words, how great is your plan or your plot, that your eyes are open and observing all the ways of human beings, to give to each one according to his ways and according to his deeds. And those HaKadosh Baruch Hu does everything midah keneged midah. He manages everything, and he observes everything, he's aware of everything. And this, of course, is obvious also in the Megillah. Even the Goyim are aware of all that they attempted to do against us, and they were not successful. We don't even know half of what they tried that failed. That's what we mean when we say, Hallelujah Hashem kol Goyim, Shabechu kol ha'omim. Hallelujah Hashem kol Goyim. The nations of the world should give praise to Hashem. They should give praise, yes, because they know better than us what they were planning against us. But in the last moment something happened, it didn't work out. We don't even know because it never came out in public. It was never published in the newspaper. They plan all the time against us, but they don't always succeed. So they need to give praise too. The name Esther is very similar or very close to the word in Hebrew Hester. Hester means hidden. Because the whole miracle of Esther is in Esther. It's in Hester. In other words, it's being hidden. You don't see the miracle until later in the Megillah when everything unfolds. So basically there are 12 principles that we'll go over that stand out from the Megillah. Principle number 1, Hashem stands behind everything. He's the one who's responsible for everything that's going on. It was not Haman's idea. It was not Achashverosh. Hashem is behind everything. Principle number 2, or idea number 2, is not to give in to the Goy. Just because he threatens our faith, just because he poses a danger, we don't give in to him. As Mordechai did not bow down to him, the fact that he did not bow to him was also a message for the future, that in the future we should not bow to Avodah Zarah, we should not give in. Another important point is that Hashem fights for us. It's not we who make the war, we who fight. As we see, it says, Ki nafal pachdam al kol ha'amim. The fear of God, the fear of the Jews, fell on all the nations. It was not because we were stronger or that we were more numerous than they were. It was all min hashamayim, that they all of a sudden became cowards and didn't want to fight back. Imagine, the Jews were not more. So why didn't they fight back? Why didn't they put up a big fight? They couldn't come up. They couldn't come out against us because Ki nafal pachdam al kol ha'amim. The fear of the Jew came upon them. That's also min hashamayim. Another idea that can be learned from this is lo lashevet b'sha'ananut b'galut, is not to sit in the galut calmly, assuming that everything is okay. They all like us. They will never throw us out of here. There will never be any problems. No, as long as the Jews in galut, he has to remember that he's never safe. Never. The Jews in Germany thought they were safe. The Jews in Spain thought they were safe. Jews felt safe many places when they were there many years and they were successful. They had equal rights, perhaps? No. Another important lesson, never feel safe, never just be calm. This is not our home. We're just here temporarily. We also learn that when the Jew prays and when he pleads with Hashem, that has the power to cancel the decrees. We see that Hinei lo yanu velo yishan shomer Israel. How do we see that Hashem does not sleep? That Hashem does not slumber? Where do we see that from the Megillah? From Achashverosh, he couldn't sleep. He couldn't sleep. There's a story, it's a long story, but I'll tell you briefly. A very similar story where there was a plot against the Jews, and the king couldn't fall asleep, and he went out at night. And as a result of him not being able to sleep and going out at night, he discovered the plot. In other words, he himself was unaware of what was going on, and he was just going along with the bishop. That the Jews have to, either convert to Christianity or we'll throw them out. And he was going to go along with it because he was believing okay, I have to tell you. The bishop basically said, you know what? I'm going to be just like Moses. I'm going to not eat food or drink for 40 days. And if I can accomplish that, the Jews have to believe in me too and have to convert. And of course, the Jews knew that that's impossible for a human being to do that. And this was just a conspiration. Is that what you call it? No? Conspiracy. You sure? Yeah. You've used the word before, right? Yeah. Anyway, in court? Yeah. So anyway, what is the king? The king was friends with the Jews, but here, the bishop is very powerful. So just to make a long story short, the king couldn't sleep that night. This bishop was locked up in a big migdal, a big chamber, tower-like, and all that he was given for those 40 days was a long candle. A long candle that should last him to read. And a book, but no food and drink was allowed. Everything was under lock. Nobody can enter, go out, so nobody should give him food. He's going to fast for 40 days and 40 nights straight. And he's going to prove that he can do what Moshe Rabbeinu did. The king couldn't sleep. The king decided he's going to take a walk. So he goes out, and he approaches that little tower where the bishop was in, and he makes a little hole to see what's going on. And what does he see? He sees the bishop taking apart that candle and taking out some food and drink. It turns out that it was a long candle, it was hollow, and inside there was food and drink to last him for 40 days. He says, now I understand. So he says, okay, I'm going to tell the Jews that when the time comes and the bishop presents himself, what they should do. But before he tells the Jews about what he discovered, he has a question to the rabbi. Rabbi, could you explain to me why it says, Hinei lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael? There's a verse in Psalms. God does not sleep and does not slumber. Why do you have to tell me he doesn't slumber? If you tell me he doesn't sleep, that's enough. Rabbi says, oh, that's an incredible question. I didn't think of that myself. Hinei lo yanum velo yishan. He doesn't slumber and he doesn't sleep. Why say the two of them? So the Rabbi says, you know what? I don't know. The king says, I have an answer for you. Really? Yeah. Hinei lo yanum. God does not slumber. Velo yishan, he doesn't allow others to sleep either. He didn't let me sleep last night, the king says to the rabbi. And as a result of him not letting me sleep, I was able to catch the bishop red-handed. What did you see? And he tells him, he took apart the candle. So tomorrow when you come to the palace, and the bishop of course is going to tell you, you all have to convert. I just proved to you I'm like Moses. Okay? You're going to get upset, and you're going to take that candle and throw it to the floor. The candle that the bishop used. And it's going to break up. And we will see the residues of the food in there. Basically that's what happened. In other words, they got upset, the candle was thrown at the floor, and all of a sudden everybody was able to see, wait a minute, there's food in that candle. And the whole plot was uncovered. So Hinei lo yanu velo yishan shomer Yisrael. The same is true with the story of Purim, and Ahasuerus cannot sleep that night. And what happens? He discovers what Mordechai did. Mordechai once saved Ahasuerus' life. How did he save Ahasuerus' life? He happened to overhear two guards speaking Turkish who were planning to assassinate the king. They thought nobody knows Turkish there. But Mordechai was part of the Sanhedrin. He had to know many languages. Anybody who was in the Sanhedrin had to know languages. And Mordechai knew Turkish. And he understood that they were plotting, and he told the king. And they saved his life. Turned out, of course, that was true, and they were, of course, hanged. So how did this happen? Mordechai was sitting there, overhearing. He could not sleep, so he had the books read to him. Read me some stories. Read me some stories that are documented in my empire. What happened recently? Oh, really? Did we ever pay Mordechai back for this? Did we ever compensate him for this? What did we ever do for him, for his kindness, for this? He saved my life. I said, no. Oh, go bring him. So that stands out very clearly. Even if you see the guillotine about to come down, the knife, the person is about to be hanged, the person is about to be punished, the person is about to be sent to prison. A Jew should never give up hope. Always pray, even the last minute possible. My sister's father-in-law was in Auschwitz. They undressed him. He was in the gas chamber, and they were about to press the button to release the gas. They thought they were going into a shower, by the way, many of those Jews. So they're about to be gassed. The last minute, before the German managed to press the button, the camp was liberated by the Americans. Right? It was the Americans, I think, that liberated Auschwitz, or the Russians. Yeah? Anyway, they were liberated. 1 minute later, they would have been gassed. They could have easily lost hope. Here, they're told, that's it, it's the end. The last minute, one should never give up hope. The Hatzalah, the Revach Batzalah could come at the very end. The saving, the miracle can happen at the end. We see the importance of Harbe Shlichim LaMakom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has many messengers. Who were some of the messengers of Hashem in the miracle? Biktan Vateresh. Right? Biktan Vateresh were part of the messengers. Mordechai overhearing what is happening, the attempt on the life of Achashverosh. Hashem has many shlichim, many messengers to accomplish his plan. It had to happen this way. Mordechai overhears. He overhears them. What does this have to do? Hashem has many ways of accomplishing what He wants to accomplish. We see the importance of Mesirut Nefesh, of being prepared to give your life if necessary. We see the importance of another point called Al Timna Tov Mi Ba'alav. Don't hold something good from its owner. If you know something that can help someone, if you have information if you share this information with someone, it will help him, then share it with him. Some people just hold it back. They don't want to help. They don't want to help. There's no money involved. Just give information. What do you care? Where do we learn this one from? V'gam harvona zachur latov. Harvona is also remembered for the good. What did Harvona do? Harvona tells Achashverosh, after Achashverosh was upset at Haman, oh, by the way, Achashverosh, this Haman that you're upset at, he just put up a big tree in his yard to hang your best friend Mordechai. Really? Hang him. That's all Harvona said. Harvona just added a few words. Oh, by the way, this Haman, you're upset at him right now, right? He's also planning to hang Mordechai. Hang him instead. So because he added those words, that sealed the fate of Haman. If you have some information that can help, share that information. Harvona had some information. He didn't have to volunteer it. Don't hold something back, something good from someone that can benefit from that. Another idea is if it's a terrible time for Yaakov, if this is a terrible, dangerous time for the Jewish people, what is this an indication of? It's an indication that they need to do teshuvah, that they need to return. That is what the Torah says. In other words, we have been warned already. And we have to listen to Him. Anyway, the days of Purim are propitious. Just like the days of Elul are propitious for Teshuvah. Propitious means that they are good days. They're very special, very unique, that they help us. Elul is propitious for Teshuvah, and Purim are also very propitious for Simcha, for being happy, for bringing about the Geulah. It's not a coincidence that Adar and Nisan are close to each other. Nisan is the month of Geulah. So Adar is also a time to do Teshuvah. Just that in Elul we do Teshuvah Miyir'ah, we're afraid of the Yom Hadin. The Day of Judgment is coming. So Elul is a month of Teshuvah out of fear. Now this is a time of Teshuvah out of love. As I mentioned before, how we go about making the tikkun, not necessarily with hatati, aviti, pashati, with fasts. On the contrary, with celebration, with simcha, with sending gifts. This is our form of teshuvah, mi'ahava, during the month of Adar. Rabbis also tell us that Purim will never be cancelled even when Mashiach comes. Yemei Purim ha'ele lo ya'avru. This is the idea of what Purim represents, the Mechiyah of Amalek, is exactly what will happen when Mashiach comes too. So this will continue forever. This is a revelation. On Purim we have a revelation in Hashemayim of the Hashgacha Elyonah, and this is exactly what will happen when Mashiach comes. That Amalek will be destroyed through direct intervention of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not through the army of this nation or of that nation, but through direct intervention from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We also need to remember that the threats are always coming back. People always try, nations and enemies are always after us. There have been many stories of Purim in other countries, in other communities. There's a famous story of Purim Hebron. The city of Hebron had a very similar incident where they were going to be destroyed in a very similar miracle, and they celebrated their own Purim on that date, whenever it happened. One of the most incredible things of the Megillah, however, that will go unnoticed by most people reading it, is a very small letter. A very small letter in the Megillah that many of you perhaps have not noticed. Let me read to you exactly what to find. Oh, you know already about it, huh? Yeah. What is that? In the 10 names of the children of Haman, you will find the letters Taf Shin Zayin written very small. And nobody ever understood why they were written small, what were they for. These letters are smaller than the rest of them. And now they understand. After the Nuremberg trials, which occurred in the year 5707, then they understood what the Tafshin Zayin represented, the year 5707, when again, Aseret Bnei Aman Nitlu, again the 10 children of Aman were once again hanged. In other words, the history of Purim repeated itself, and even Shtreicher, Yamach Shemo, as he was being led to the gallows, one of the guys who was being led, he called out, Purim Fest, 1947. In other words, he understood that once again Amalek experienced a downfall, and this is a Purim celebration for the Jews again, but this time it's happening in Nuremberg in 1947. And last but not least, we see that even Mordechai, who was a great rabbi, great tzaddik, nevertheless he was concerned. And even though he was concerned, he was an optimist. Where did he get the optimism for? The things were going to work out? In the olden days, in the days of the Gemara, when there were no prophets, they used to wait for children to come out of school. If there was a big question or a big issue or concern, they would ask the children, what pasuk did you learn today? And the children came out this time and told Mordechai, Utso etza vetufar, dabru davar velo yakum. Mordechai says, Baruch Hashem. Now I know everything will work out for the best. The children basically told him the pasuk that says, let the nations of the world, let the enemies of the Jews think up of any plans they want. In the end, Hashem will cancel their plans. Utsu etzab, come up with any idea and plan that you want. Vetufar, it will be cancelled. It will not work out. Baruch Hashem, nothing worked out as the Goyim intended. Everything worked out the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu intended. Rabot machshavot belevish v'atzat Hashem itakum. There are many pesukim that remind us of all these ideas, but we simply go through them and we don't understand what we're saying. By reading the Megillah, by understanding clearly what went on, we will see that the miracle of Purim has repeated itself throughout history. The fact that we are here in this room, alive after so many years in the Galut, after so many persecutions, is the greatest miracle of all. So Chag Purim v'Sameach to all of you.